and welcome to Fair Trade, a Project Zion podcast series where courageous people share the candid stories of their faith journey and what brought them to Community of Christ. I'm your host, Robin Linkhart, and I'm here today with Jason Smith. Welcome, Jason. We're thrilled to have you with us on Project Zion.
Well, thanks, Robin. I'm glad to be here. I'm a big fan of the podcast.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. So I want to just take a minute to get to know you. So just introduce yourself to our listeners like you would introduce yourself to someone new you were just meeting.
Well, I'm kind of an introvert, so I don't tell much about myself to most people, but I'm 48 years old. I live in Duncan, Oklahoma with my wife, my mother, and our two dogs. I work in IT for a regional public agency. I just finished my master's degree in interreligious studies at Chicago Theological Seminary, and I'm going to be starting a PhD program there this fall. I'm an active member of two Community of Christ congregations in Oklahoma City, which is the closest one to me, and also I'm active in Salt Lake City congregation. Between these two and a local Disciples of Christ congregation, I usually preach at least once a month or so. I'm also a Freemason, so I spend a lot of time going to those meetings. I should also mention that I'm somewhat active in the Mormon history world. I'm a longtime member and current board member of the John Whitmer Historical Association. I really enjoy restoration history, especially the history of those smaller and lesser known expressions of the movement. Between school and historical studies, I spend probably too much time reading, listening to audiobooks and podcasts, and always hoping to learn something new. I also work on the Whitmercast podcast, which is done under the auspices of JWHA.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, I just love getting to know you there at the beginning. And that is where we're going to start with your whole life story. So we want you to tell us about your growing up years and pay special attention to your faith journey and God and church and what was going on with those things from the time you were born. Let's take it up through high school.
Okay, well, I was born at a very young age. Um, I was born and raised in Oklahoma, and like the majority of folks around here, I was brought up in the Southern Baptist Church. Uh, Mostly I attended with my grandparents, and we went Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night too. When I was 7 years old, I remember making what we called a profession of faith in Jesus. And ever since then, I've considered myself to be a Christian. In my early teen years, I stopped going to church for a while. But when I was about 15, I started getting active again because my best friend was active and I wanted to be involved with it. I jumped pretty much head first into things. I got baptized at 15 and started helping to teach younger children and do things around the church. About this time, a guest preacher came to speak at my church about the dangers posed by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Mormonism, he taught us, was heresy, and its members were lost and going to hell. And at 15, I believed him. I was also fascinated with the strange and novel doctrines of Mormon theology. Shortly after his visit, I transferred to a high school in the next town over, and who was the very first person to try and make friends with me but a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? I pretty much wore him and his family out with my questions and all of the sophisticated challenges that my 15-year-old brain could come up with. Um, and although I had a natural aptitude for technology and computers, and I started making money fixing them while I was still in high school, I knew from that moment on what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to learn everything I could about Mormonism so I could convert people to the truth as I saw it. I graduated from high school and started taking a few college classes, but I couldn't shake this interest in Mormonism. So that kind of takes me up to high school.
Wow, that's quite a story. So, Southern Baptist, you say, and now you have just heard the story about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and all of the tradition and history it brings with us. You move to another high school. You met a friend who happened to be a member of that church, and you're graduating from high school. So tell us what happened next.
Well, so I took college classes on and off for many years, but for most of my adult life, I've worked for myself, and so I've had a lot of flexibility um, to do ministry work, to take classes, to do other things, and it gave me a lot of opportunities to engage in what I perceived to be missions work and evangelism. For instance, you may not know, Robin, about the when the Mormon Church opens a new temple, they have an open house and invite the public to come tour it. And then you have the evangelicals that stand out front and pass out literature about the Mormon Church. And I've done that in Nashville and Albuquerque and Oklahoma City, Nauvoo, St. Louis. Um, uh, Not something I'm particularly proud of anymore, but that's how involved I was. As I would take a lot of my own time to travel to these places and do that. I even came up to World Conference a couple of times and stood out there and passed out things, and get to that in a little bit. But the most interesting one of my wake up moments was when I was passing out a tract that was like 10 reasons Joseph Smith is a false prophet to people at World Conference, and people come up and say, "Who is Joseph Smith?" And they're delegates to the conference. Um, that was really eye opening for me. Um, I've always rejected the word anti-Mormon for what I was doing because I never was against the Mormon people. I was never anti-Mormon. I was concerned about them. I sincerely believed that they were in danger of going to hell forever, and I was doing what I was doing out of a place of love. Um, but that's what I spent a lot of my 20s doing was involved in this kind of ministry, and that kind of takes me up to when I encounter the Church of Christ or the Community of Christ and Church of Christ Temple Lot and some other groups. If you want me to talk about that.
Yeah, so how old were you then when you started encountering the Temple Lot Church and Community of Christ?
So when I was 19, I took a solo road trip. It was about 7 hours up to Independence from where I live, and I took a trip up there for about a week. And because I had been reading, and I probably actually sit down and read it cover to cover, I don't know how many times, The Virgin Path of the Restoration by Steve Shields. And that was one of my favorite books because I found it fascinating that so many groups had come out of, the 1830 Church of Christ that Joseph Smith started. And so I went up there, like I said, at the age of 19, first encountered these groups, and so I became fascinated with these groups. There's over 200 expressions just in the edition that I had was the fourth edition. I think it's 1990 printing of the book. The newest edition has over 500 expressions listed, but I wanted to encounter as many as I could in the Independence area, and there's several. But I remember being told I was so excited about going up to this and taking this trip, and an older preacher that was with that ministry that came to my church when I was 15, he told me, he said there aren't enough Josephites to count for anything. So don't even worry about, trying to reach those folks. And he didn't know much about what the RLDS church, that was RLDS at that time. He didn't know much about what they taught, but they just, he knew that they didn't believe in polygamy or eternal progression and things like that. But he said there's just not enough of those to count, so don't worry about them. Well, I was fascinated with the diversity of belief and history, and so that's when I encountered. It was probably so I was 19, so um, it was 93, I think, when I took that trip. Yeah, 93.
And then you had about 10 years or so um, with the Southern Baptist expression, picketing at different things. And now you're circling back around and rediscovering Community of Christ at that point.
Well, so there's a little bit of a journey there, and my deconstruction of the Southern Baptist faith took a number of years, and I give you there's a few notes that I made about highlights of or milestones in that deconstruction. One of them was an article, and I can't remember exactly what issue it was in, but it was around 2000, the year 2000 in the Herald. It was an article by Tony Chavala Smith, and one of the things that I had been told by people in evangelical ministry about the RLDS church is they didn't know what they believed. That they had just gone so far away from Joseph Smith that they didn't know what they believed anymore. And this article that Tony wrote was about the importance of articulating the faith and beliefs of RLDS, Community of Christ, I guess at that time. And so I emailed Tony. He had his email address in there, and I said, "Hey, I'm coming up there. I'd like to meet with you and talk with you." And that was the start of I guess about a 25-year friendship now that with Tony. And I learned so much about theology that I had never heard in my Baptist bubble. And one of the other things that about this time that in my deconstruction was something called the Baptist Faith and Message, and this is the official doctrinal statement of the Southern Baptist Convention, and it gets updated from time to time. It was updated in 1925 or so, and then 1963, and then in 2000 they had decided that it was too liberal, too moderate, and so the conservatives that had taken over the Southern Baptist Convention in the 80s and 90s, they decided to revise it, and they were very specific about some things that really bothered me. One of the things was the previously the Baptist Faith and Message had said that the Bible is the record of God's revelation to man. And then it went on to talk about Jesus being the revelation of God to man. And they changed it to say that the Bible is the revelation of God to man. And they really put an emphasis on the Bible as almost a sacred, divine object itself. And another thing that was revised in that 2000 statement was several things about women that bothered me. The about wives being submissive to their husbands, specifying that women could not serve as pastors or ministers. Those things had not been formalized in the statement up until then, and so these kind of things were starting to bother me and rub me the wrong way a little bit because I was raised, even though I was raised Southern Baptist, I was raised by very strong women and taught to the equality of the sexes and all that. And so the third thing that really put a big wrench in my faith was something I came across with that's really interesting to put into my story, but it's an article by Boyd K. Packer, apostle in the LDS Church, and it was an article called "Candle of the Lord." And in this article, it was a speech, a transcript of a speech he'd given, I think, at a mission center, maybe the MTC in Provo, to prospective missionaries. And it basically he was saying it's okay if you don't have a testimony yet. And a couple of quotes from this, he says, "Bear witness of those things you hope to be true." Right? And another one is, "A testimony can be found in the bearing of it." Basically, if you don't believe it, just say it anyway, and the faith will come to you. And I started to ask myself when I read this, is that what I had been doing all these years? Um, had I been arguing things that I thought were true and hoping that they were true, trying to convince people that they were true, but had I been doing this, what Boyd Packer was talking about? And so those were some of the things that, and getting to know other people in the community of Christ also, and getting to really see their Christian example. Um, David Howlett is a good friend of mine that I saw that in. Ron Romig, um, and there were many others, but and then so I kind of took baby steps. It was incremental. I kind of backed away from the Southern Baptist Church. I thought, well, maybe I'll try the United Methodist Church. That's a little more liberal and a little more progressive. And then I moved when I got married. My wife wanted to find a new church for us to go to. She brought children into the marriage, and so I was instantly a father. And the we started going to a Disciples of Christ church, and really have great, wonderful memories of friends in those churches. But when COVID happened, my wife is severely immunocompromised, and so we quit going to church when COVID happened, and started doing online church, and I started seeing some Community of Christ congregations that were had online services, and I knew some of the people in those congregations, and I thought, well, I'll check that out. And there's a few reasons that I joined, but I think the community aspect of it was key for me. The emphasis on peace and justice, inclusion, um, LGBTQ affirmation, and community building, those kind of things, really resonated with me. I also resonated with the historical journey of Community of Christ. Um, from this attitude of we have all the answers, the one true church, to more of a spirit of humility and intellectual and spiritual honesty. Um, I had read, things like the position papers and presidential papers, and seen the the movement of RLDS Church into Community of Christ over the 50s, 60s, 70s. And I said, hey, that's my journey. That's me. Um, and again, I had so many good friends, Tony and Charmaine, Steve Shields, David Howlett, that just really they loved me through lots of challenges and questions that I had, and that's really kind of what brought me to Community of Christ.
So you mentioned that you did come to a place of joining the church. Tell us about that. And were you baptized and confirmed, or confirmed based on a prior baptism?
So I had started attending via Zoom the Oklahoma City Heartland congregation, and the they were kind of shut down for a while. Their sanctuary burned down, and so they were meeting online for a while during COVID anyway, and then now we're meeting in the gym, and the new sanctuary is being built. But they're about an hour and a half for me. That's the closest congregation, and so I usually attend by Zoom, but I did that for probably a year or so, and even started teaching the Sunday school class a little bit, and really got involved and got to know the people. Went up in person a couple of times, and when I had decided to join, I joined by confirmation only. because I had previously been baptized and I felt like it was valid. It was. I'm a believer in believers baptism. I think that to be valid in my mind, it should be by somebody that knows what it means and what they're doing. So I joined about it was November of 22, so almost 3 years.
So, you mentioned you're connected as far as attending periodically, and I'm assuming when you said you go to Disciples of Christ periodically, your wife is still very connected with Disciples of Christ. Does she and or your kids join you in Community of Christ every now and then? What does that look like for your family?
Well, so our kids are all out of the house now, and
Okay.
they're other places. My wife actually told me during COVID, the height of COVID, when I started getting involved with Community of Christ online services, and I tried to get her involved. Um, she told me that she really had come to the point where she didn't believe anymore, and so she's an atheist, has been for some time, and it took her a while to tell me that. So she did go with me to my confirmation, and really appreciate that. But she has her own things in life that they're meaningful to her.
So you've been on this really in-depth journey of faith for a long time. What have some of the challenges been for you, or maybe challenges you still work through as you live into this new faith tradition?
You know, I thought about that, and the thing that honestly I still struggle with and don't know what to do with is Joseph Smith. You know, I spent so many years trying to convince people of the truth about Joseph Smith, and really have looked into a lot of the history of it from just pure history of it, and I can appreciate the heart of a young person who's confused and desiring the truth, going to God and asking for the direction. I can appreciate that. Um, but a lot of the other things, you know, that Joseph Smith did, I really have a problem with. And I think I'm not alone in that. Even with among longtime Community of Christ members and those that have come from the LDS tradition into Community of Christ. Um, you know, I find some good in the Book of Mormon and Doctrine and Covenants, but it's not the Bible to me. The Bible stands alone, and I think that I find that's true for a lot of folks too. Um, but I especially enjoy and appreciate the later sections of the Doctrine and Covenants. I think that they are statements that I can sustain as scriptural, you know, as the mind and will of God. Uh,
So you've changed from a Southern Baptist frame of seeing and understanding God and God revealed through Jesus Christ and the continuing presence of the Holy Spirit through a different lens, and also exploring the Mormon Church for a while, other restoration splinter groups or offshoots of the restoration movement, and ultimately with Community of Christ, but still connected in lots of ways to a diverse community of faith. Obviously, John Whitmer Historic Association, we have lots of different folks from different expressions of restoration that share together on that journey of studying history. Has there been anything that you felt like you had to give up from your Southern Baptist upbringing to live into where you are now? And if so, was that difficult?
there are some things that I have given up or shed that they were not necessarily things that I felt like I had to give up, and they weren't that difficult to give up. But a lot of the attitude that I had growing up as a Southern Baptist, I honestly I see it also in a lot of folks in the Restoration movement too, that feel like their church is the one true church, or their way is the correct way. Um, it's been a blessing in my life to give that up, and I think that it's I really have been blessed by that. Um, there really hasn't been anything that I've had to give up that was difficult. When, Once I finally came to the determination that it wasn't good for me.
Yeah, I think your journey is very unique in some regards because it feels um, you didn't rush through things. It was kind of one step at a time and building and layering on things and in some ways a gentle progression of awakening and understanding. And it sounds like you do a lot of study and connecting with people that are meaningful in your life that have been helpful and supportive along the way. So, as you walk with church members, and I'm talking about Community of Christ members and friends and new seekers, you attend online with Salt Lake City fairly often, I think. Um,
Yeah.
what do you see people looking for in their church or faith experience, and what connects for them in meaningful ways as they choose to journey with or spend time with Community of Christ? What are some of the big life questions that you're hearing from folks?
I think one of the biggest needs that people have, even introverts like me, um, is to be connected with other people. And I think that our emphasis on community, and especially community in Christ, and based upon the love of God, that's what people are looking for. One thing I especially the Salt Lake City Community of Christ congregation is, everyone is welcome. No one is turned away. And you know, I've been in situations in the past in churches where people were asked, are you sure you need to be here? Because maybe there's a better place for you somewhere else. And that breaks my heart, because I know that the love of God is inclusive of everyone. And so I think expounding upon the enduring principles of the church, the mission initiatives, all those are things that are valid for what people are looking for. The worth of all persons, and uh, that's that's what people want, is they want to be seen and loved, and connect with others.
Jason, as you think about the future, what are your hopes for Community of Christ?
That it doesn't stop, that it continues this journey of towards growth, of inclusion, and that it continues to hold out the gospel of Jesus as a kind of a lifeline to the world, because we're in a very hurting and divisive world right now. But I mean, there's nothing that we could do other than better than, I think, than just to reach out to people with the love of Jesus, and 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 model that in our own community.
So, if you were going to say something to Community of Christ as a people, what would you need Community of Christ to hear you say?
Don't give up. Hold on. Keep the faith. Like I said, there are too many hurting people in the world that need us, that need Community of Christ. Um, we, I know that we have concerns fiscal concerns, temporal concerns, and we look at graphs and charts and trends, and things don't look that great sometimes. But just to keep on with that journey that the community of Christ has taken, this very courageous journey, and we need to be courageous and keep after it.
Jason, is there anything that I haven't asked you about today that you'd really like to share with our listeners? Maybe something you forgot to share or that you just really want to share?
I would only say that I would encourage listeners to um, to not give up on those people in their life that that argue with them, that maybe look down upon the church or their involvement in the church. Don't discount those people because they'll come around eventually, I believe.
Well, Jason, I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to share your story with us today. It's been really a joy-filled experience for me, and I feel privileged to be able to hear your story and to share it with our listeners. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Robin.
And as always, a very special thanks to all of our listeners for spending a portion of your day with us. If you would like to hear more from courageous people willing to share the candid stories of their faith journey and what brought them to Community of Christ, check out our Fair Trade series on projectzionpodcast.org, or you can click on the link listed in today's show notes, which will take you to all of our Fair Trade episodes. This is your host, Robin Linkhart, and you are listening to Project Zion Podcast. Go out and make the world a better place. Take good care. Bye bye.